All right, everybody, we are going to wait a few minutes as people kind of trickle on in. So welcome, welcome.
Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to see you. Okay, I believe that our attendance is plateauing a little bit, so we'll go ahead and get started just to honor everyone's time. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself, Natalie Elliott, New Schools Manager here in the Charter Authorizing Division at TEA. And I am actually not going to do most of the talking today. I know you guys have seen a lot of me at the office hours and support seminars of late, but I'm going to turn things over to my esteemed colleague, John Garland, to really guide us through all of the reminders and best practices in the I may interject here and there with a couple of examples or reminders, but for the most part, we can do this in our sleep. So I'm going to stop talking now and turn it over to John to just remind us of the objectives for today and some other key housekeeping things, and then get started on the content. We're glad you're here.
All right, everybody. Again, it's good to see you. Sorry, I've been MIA for the last couple. Life sort of stepped in the way, but I am back right at the end. So welcome, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. All right, just some housekeeping and reminders. So we've been sending out weekly emails. I hope everyone has been getting them. As I say every meeting, if you are not getting them, you need to email us ASAP so we can add you to it. I think there might just be one more update email though for next week. That said, I did want to remind everybody the new submission date is November 11th. I'm going to say it one more time, November 11th. This is important because if you submit it this Friday, you've submitted it. So just be sure before you submit it that you're aware you have up until November 11th, 5 p.m. to submit that to us. All right, so 3 bullets along with that though, okay? Really important for those who have not done this before, need you to know this. We will not be available on November 11th for technical assistance. Most likely, Natalie and I will be available that last hour leading up to 5 p.m. But the rest of the day, you all need to go ahead and make sure that you all have all your tech questions answered before the 11th. So that means the 10th. We will be around all day for the 10th. So if you need to call us at 4:59, I will certainly talk to you and walk you through whatever issues you were scared of or might have or worry that you may have. But you need to kind of forecast that and plan accordingly, all right? So I'm gonna say it again, we will not be available on the 11th up until about 4 p.m. So about 4 p.m. we'll sign on for any like last minute emergency questions, all right? On that note, because we've extended that due date, you all can also have a public meeting up until basically the day before you submit the application. However, again, as a reminder, you will need to send those email and the notifications, the published notifications as well, no later than the 6th. So that 5-day email window for the email notification, that's going to be November 6th. All right, so you can have one up to the 10th, but you need to be sure that you have that email notification sent to us by the 6th. All right. All right, so what are we going to cover today? Final touches and submission, right? So we're going to go a little bit over the preparation overview, nothing, just super high level. We're going to do some final touches and some considerations that we have found helpful for applicants in the past. I'm going to walk you through a bit of the submission process. I'm going to walk you through the actual like interface of what share file looks like, just so you can see what the screen looks like. I'm going to walk you through a bit of the completion check process. Again, we're not going to get too far into the weeds today, but if you do have questions, please use the Q&A function, and we will certainly spend some time answering questions today. And then last but not least, obviously, as we always do, we're going to end on some key takeaways. All right, let's talk about the overview. So when, how, and where are you going to submit this application that you've been working on for probably what seems like forever to you? When, as I've said 1,000 times in the last 2 minutes, December 11th. So by 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you're not in Central Standard Time, you need to go ahead and make sure that you submit it by
It's
5 p.m.
November 11th.
I'm sorry.
John,
Oh, is that?
I just want to, do you want to check if that about this deck? I just want to make sure that if this is the right one and we just missed that one date, hopefully.
It's all right. We will go ahead and make sure that that date is corrected. Apologies. It is November 11th. Apologies.
Yes.
November 11th, but we will get that fixed. How? So all applications are going to be submitted electronically like we did last year. So no paper submissions. And please, please, please do not mail any hard copies or drop any hard copies off to the agency. We will not receive them. So be sure that you limit all of your submissions electronically. And then where, we're going to go over where throughout this presentation, but it is the Generation 28 application submission link. So you can find it in this deck once we put it online. And we'll also, you can also find it in the instructions and guidance document. So if you're not sure where to submit it, this link is in the instructions and guidance document, as well as this deck. And then of course you can email us and we'll provide that link. All right, so what application documents are you going to submit? So if you've done this before, it's going to be the same as you did it last year. If you've not done this before, I'm going to walk you through it pretty slowly. All right, so you have the narrative document. This is the document that you've been putting all your answers and responses in, right? So that's going to be the first document. That is a separate, that's separate. Then you're going to submit your attachment submission document. We're going to go over what that is. But ultimately, that's where you take all your attachments, you're going to put them, you're going to combine them, you're going to put them as one PDF, and that's going to be your second document that you're going to submit. And if you're a new operator, I'll repeat, if you're a new operator, you have just one more document, and that's your financial plan workbook. Please, please, please give that to us as the Excel document that you downloaded it as, okay? So we do not need a PDF copy of it. If you're an experienced operator, you have one more document. So if you're an experienced operator, you're going to give us 4 documents in your upload. That fourth one is your portfolio overview workbook. Please do not forget to fill that out. If you are an experienced operator, all the tabs need to be complete. And so if you're an experienced operator, you will be giving us 4 files. All right, so as a recap, new operator, you got 3 files to give us. A narrative document with all your responses, your attachments document, which is all your attachments rolled up into one PDF, and then that financial plan workbook, 3 files. If you're an experienced operator, you're going to give us 4 files. All right. So final touches and some considerations for you all. All right. So what are some good quality controls that you should do before you submit the application? Really, step 1 is just kind of reviewing what we expect of you, because that's going to be the baseline. So number 1, please reread the instructions and guidance document. Extremely important. Not only because it has where you're going to submit it, but it's also going to have information about plagiarism and any other information about the timeline, et cetera, that you probably need to know before you submit. Second, the scoring criteria in the narrative document. Got a couple emails since we published this saying, hey, John, normally you all release the rubric as a separate file. Where is that? My answer to them and my answer to you is going to be the scoring criteria on those additional information pages within the narrative document. Those have all of the criteria that appear in the rubric. The rubric is just a kind of like a culmination of all of those, but those are the exact ones. So as you see them in the application, so go them to external reviewers. So you want to be sure that your narrative responses are aligning with that criteria in each of the narrative topics. Third, in that narrative document, I think it's page 2 or 3 or 4, right? One of those up to 4. There's an application checklist. Again, everything in that checklist, if it's applicable to you, needs to be in your application. So that's a good way to double check before you hit submit that you've included all those things that you've checked off the checkbox. All right. So step 2 is a little bit more involved, but again, if you do the work, then you will most likely and hopefully be complete and not need to cure some of the items in your application. So step 2 is do your own completion check before you submit it, right? So the first one is you're going to start with the narrative document. For you new operators, your last page on the financial, so your last page of your narrative document is the financial plan, I believe. That page number, which is auto paginating, should not exceed 100, right? So if you're on 101, doesn't count. Also, I've already programmed the first, I think the table of contents, the checklist, the cover page, those are not calculating towards that 100 page. So if you see page 100, that's 100 of the narrative document, not the table of contents, not the cover sheet. So I've already done all that work for you. You don't need to do the math on that. If you're an experienced operator, because you have additional narrative questions that you had to answer, your last page, which will be your portfolio overview section, cannot go past 120. All right. So again, same thing. It's auto paginating, so you shouldn't have to do any math on that. This one's a big one for me. All right. So be sure that your responses are complete and, more importantly, in order. We've tried to give you this PDF document, so again, you don't need to shuffle things around. When it was a Word document, I think maybe it got more complicated. But sometimes we do get submissions that somehow, some way, the governance section is somehow in a different order than it was as you downloaded it. Be sure that the application that you submit to us is in the same order that you downloaded it, okay? So just be sure, because we can't spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to piece things together, because if that takes us a long time, then that stalls when you're able to know, whether or not your application is going forward. So please, please, please make sure it's in order before you submit it. Lastly, signatures. There used to be a signature on the application cover, the application, what is it, applicant profile page. That's no longer there. So all you need to be sure of that you've initialed and signed the letter of special assurances. Okay, so double check all of those are there. Because again, we hate to send that back during completion check and say, hey, you're missing an initial. Right, so be sure that your narrative document is complete. Your attachments document. So again, what you're gonna do with your attachments, you've had, I think, 34 of them. I don't know, however many there are. Once you've completed all of those, the easiest way to do it, if you're not tech savvy, is to just print all of the attachment documents that you've done, print them out, including those cover pages, put them in order, scan them in. Once you scan them in, there's your PDF. Okay, if you're more tech savvy, then make it a PDF through Adobe. If not, print them out, put them in order, rescan it in, there's your PDF. You need to include those cover sheets, right? Again, we will kick it back to you during completion check if that cover sheet's not there. And we do that not to be annoying, but because we don't know, we can't assume that you either A, forgot that this attachment's here, or B, maybe it's not applicable to you, we don't know. So we need you to submit those cover sheets because a lot of them do have not applicable on them. Also, order of attachments, again, that's a big, I'm gonna say a pet peeve of mine, I'll own that, is please give us those attachments in order. In the past, I mean, as of last year, we've gotten attachments that are out of order, or the pages are out of order. Please, please, please be sure that before you submit that attachments document, that you've not only paginated all those attachment pages on the lower right-hand corner, but you also have scanned them in order. Okay, be sure, double check that before you scan it in. All right. And then lastly on that, for your attachments document, once you've paginated them, please, 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 if you forget, again, we're going to kick it back to you. Please go back to the narrative document. All right, back to the narrative document. On the table of contents, you'll see there's a little piece for the attachments. Please put in where we can find those pages, okay? Because the attachments by and by exceed the narrative document in terms of page length. So it's very hard to comb through attachments if we don't know what page things land on.
John, we have a couple of questions. We've got one that came through the chat and then two others through the Q&A function that are fairly similar. So just a reminder about, do applicants have to scan the printed application and upload, or just save as a PDF? Can you talk about those two components as far as the application narrative document and the attachments document?
Yeah, so the narrative document, again, this is what you've been putting all your answers into. You don't need to scan that. It is already a PDF. So all you need to do is hit save and send it to us, when you upload to ShareFile. So that narrative document, as long as you saved it, you double check, you've reopened it, made sure everything's there that you want in there, you're good to go. You don't need to scan that narrative document in. So if you're a past or returning applicant, there may have been a scenario where we were saying you need to give us one ginormous PDF with everything in it. We don't live in that age anymore. It's easier for us. It's easier for external reviewers, and I think it's easier for you all. So the narrative document, just save it. That's your PDF. You don't need to do anything with it. Your attachments document, that needs to be one PDF. But obviously, again, like I said, there's two roads. And to not create confusion, I think the easiest way for most people is to take every attachment cover page, every response that you did with that attachment, print it all out, put it in order, paginate it, and then rescan it back up. That way you have a nice, pretty one PDF file with all those attachments together. That'll be the second file that you send us. I hope that clarifies it.
Thank you. And then the questions that came through the Q&A are about the signature on the letter of special assurances. Does it have to be an electronic signature, or can it be a wet signature and scanned in?
So yeah, if you want to scan it in, if that's easier, then by all means. If you want to, scan it in, that's fine. But what we don't want, and we got it last year, please don't do this. Please don't print out the last page of the letter of special assurances, sign it, and send that to us as like its own file. Okay, so wherever and however you affix your signature, it needs to be part of that 100-page document, right? So if you want to scan it, you got to print it all out, sign it, scan it in, submit it to us. I think the easiest way is to do an electronic signature, but you don't have to. Just do not send us that one page with your signature on it as a separate document.
So this kind of ties into what you were saying previously, and that the intention behind the narrative document is that it's one prepackaged PDF ready to go. Everything, it's all in one. Everything that you need is already there, so that you don't have to print anything out and scan it in separately. So that was the intention behind the electronic signature.
Correct. And I'll pause for more questions if we need to.
No, so we do have just a clarifying question about that, the initials. It's the applicant is asking that they need to drop a digital or wet signature into those blanks. I believe you should be able to just type initials, and that suffices.
Yes,
it doesn't
so
have to be like an Adobe sign fancy
No.
initial. Yeah.
No, correct. So the Adobe, yes. So the file is already pre-formatted to where for your initials, it will just accept text. You can just write JG, whatever. For the signature on the bottom, it should be calibrated to insert a electronic signature. So it should already be pre-calibrated to enter an e-signature in it. Again, if not, then you can put a handwritten signature there, but it should be pre-calibrated.
And another clarification question, the board chair can sign the letter of special assurances electronically, the whole thing.
Correct, yes.
Yes, okay. Please let us know if we did not address those clearly. I know that this is a big one. And I think we've addressed all of those pertaining to this slide at this time, and we will catch up with the rest of the questions as needed.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on. All right, so trying to move this thing out of the way. So what are some frequently missed items during the completion check process? So there are 6 big ones, and I threw 7 and 8 as a bonus. So the first one is statement of impact forms. please, 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 we gave you a list this year. We've never done this before. You are bound by that list, right? So whoever's on that list, that's who you are required to send it to. So based on the ISDs that you are going to foreseeably be included as part of your geographic boundaries, you need to send those to the ISD superintendents, the board presidents, and all the elected officials that would be applicable to those school districts. That said, double check that you've sent them all. Because we do go one by one, because what will happen is if Natalie's the applicant, she gives me an application and it says Austin ISD, Round Rock ISD, Pflugerville ISD, Georgetown ISD. I'm going to look at that list to see which ones that you all were supposed to send them to. And if one is missing, we kick it back to you and say, hey, this one's missing. Email notifications of public meetings. Again, so throughout this whole process, you should have been CCing the charter application inbox every time you've sent an email to a public official. If you're sitting there freaking out that you didn't do it, that's okay. But what you're going to have to do is go back to your email, print that out, and include it in that attachment. I think it's whatever the attachment is for public meetings, right? So if you forgot to do it, you need to, or if you forgot to CC us, you need to just show proof that you sent it to X number of X elected officials. And so we can have something to cross-check and make sure that you sent it to the people you were supposed to send it to, okay? Number 3, staff profile the form. So those are those forms that's like, hey, this is gonna be the teacher, right? And all the teachers have one, or this is the executive director, superintendent, that's one. So those HR forms, most often than not, this is where applicants get a kickback because they either forgot one or it's not matching on the org chart, right? So as an example, one might say we're going to have a school counselor or a school therapist. If there's no HR form for that, but it's on the org chart, we're going to kick it back to you and say, we see a school therapist on the org chart, but we don't see a HR form for it, or flip, right? So be sure that your HR forms match who is on your org charts, okay? So those need to be, those need to mirror each other. Attachment cover sheets, we'll kick these back to you pretty frequently again if you A, forgot to include a cover sheet, or B, forgot to include whether or not the box is applicable or not. So what will happen in this kind of scenario will be attachment G3. I'm just throwing something out there. Attachment G3 has a box that says non-applicable. An applicant gives us the form, gives us the cover sheet, doesn't include anything in the box, but there's nothing behind it, right? So our assumption is, well, we don't know if you forgot it or you forgot to click the box. So as a redundancy, we will kick it back to you and say, hey, you forgot to include this cover sheet, or you forgot to click this box to say whether it's NA or not. Statements of financial position, based on the directions of that cover sheet, a lot of times people will assume because there's zero cash flow or zero activity that they just need to not include this attachment. You need to include material behind this attachment, even if it says 0. So if there's no cash flow because you're brand new, it just still needs to say 0 on it. Tax exempt status. So this is a proof that you have sent if you are still pending tax exempt status. You need to submit proof that you at least filed before November 11th. Okay, so 7 and 8 aren't necessarily part of our completion check process, but they are brought up from time to time, especially when you get to capacity interview. The first one are bylaws. Please check your bylaws. Make sure that there's not a religious purpose, especially those bylaws for entities that have been around a while. Please make sure that your bylaws do not have a religious purpose stated in them. And then number 8, documents. It's not unheard of, but again, what the last thing you want is general counsel asking you in a capacity interview, hey, why do your documents have the name of another school on them, right? Or another state. So be sure that your documents that you are submitting have your name as the organization, All right. Before I move on, do we have any questions, Natalie, about this slide?
Not specific to this slide. I just kind of wanted to
Yeah.
add to what you just mentioned is that these 7 and 8, the kind of freebies that we're giving you, obviously these do not pertain to completion check, even if there are other entities mentioned or religious purpose mentioned. It's, you know, and you don't have time to have those amended at this time, it's okay, but they, you know, further along, if your proposal happens to go further along in the process, those things would need to be amended. So just know that they are errors that would be flagged at some point in the process.
Right. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on. All right. If I get my computer. Okay, so let's talk about the submission process. 4 big buckets for this. So when you're ready, before or by the application deadline, you're going to access ShareFile. ShareFile is what you're going to officially submit your application through. For those who've used Dropbox, it's pretty similar to Dropbox. As I said earlier, you're going to have 3 to 4, depending on if you're an experienced operator or new operator. Those documents are going to be uploaded at the same time. So they're not there's not 3 or 4 different, you're not going to go to ShareFile 3 times, right? Or 4 times. You're going to go 1 time. And you're going to drag and drop all of that, all of your submissions into the one upload. And we'll walk through it here in a second. So it's going to take you to a screen when you click this link. So when you're ready to submit and you go to ShareFile, it's going to take you to a screen that prompts you to input some information before it will let you upload. First one is email. Please use the email that you've included on the application, not your personal email, not your business email, whatever email you have put on that application. That is how I'm going to cross-check and make sure that this is coming from the actual applicant. Second, please use the name, because it's going to ask you for your first and last name. Please use the name that is as the main contact on the application. So if you're the board president and you're submitting this application, but you're not the main contact, put the main contact contact's information. Third, it's going to ask you for company. You're going to use a sponsoring entity. Do not use the charter school name. Okay, so if you're charter ABC, but your entity is Charter Schools Unlimited Inc., you need to put Charter Schools Unlimited Inc. Okay. Upload documents. So again, once you put that information in, it's going to take you to the actual upload screen. All you're going to do is just drag. I think it even gives you an option to upload if you're not comfortable with dragging. Like you can physically, I mean, you can click a button and it'll take you to a folder that you can pick from. But it's easiest if you just drag and drop into upload. Be sure that when you have put all those files in, that you hit the upload button. If you do not hit the upload button, it's not going to know to upload those files. So what we don't want is for 5 o'clock to roll around and you go, John, I haven't got any kind of email saying I submitted it. I'm going to say, hey, did you hit the upload button? So hit the upload button. Best practices, I'm going to say like the airport, y'all, like the airport. Get there at least 2 hours beforehand. Every year we have someone that calls at 4:55 saying, hey, I'm having problems. The assumption is you waited till 4:50 to upload this thing. I'm telling you right now, because you never know. Please, please, please get to ShareFile at least 2 hours before 5 o'clock. So by 3 o'clock, you need to be trying to upload that thing. And then late submissions will not be accepted. This is the heartbreaking part of this job, everybody. And I know you all don't understand that because you haven't been on my place, but every year we have to, like, seriously, it breaks my heart when someone gets their application in at 5:02, right? Please don't be that applicant because we're going to have to tell you no, right? I mean, all 3 up to 4 documents need to be uploaded by 5 o'clock. So once you hit the submit button, it should send you personally to whatever email that you use. It should send you a confirmation of upload. It will send me one as well, but it should send you one as well. All right. Before I move on to the walkthrough, now I see there's 2 questions. Do we need to address those now or are they for later?
Yeah, I would say it makes sense to address them now. And then there's one other question that came in through the chat. So the first question is about a page in the narrative document that does not apparently elicit a response from this team. And they're wondering if there is a way that they can delete it from the document to make room for their 100-page limit.
Yeah, so unfortunately, no. That is something we were trying to fix, right? It's just embedded in just the PDF part of the process. To keep it all streamlined, unfortunately, every time you go over a page, it links it to the topic, the area that you're in. So if you have a completely blank page, like, I mean, it's completely blank, then I'm gonna just go ahead and leave it up to the applicant. If you go to 101, I can't promise you that we will include that. But if there's a blank page, I'm talking not halfway done or not a quarter way done, but a blank, it just shoots out a completely blank page, and you go to 101, and we can try and advocate that 101 should count, because if that's on us, that's on us. But I'm telling you right now, if it's like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 sentences in, that's unfortunate, that's a page, right? So if it's a completely blank page, I leave it up to the applicant, but I can't offer any promises, obviously.
And then we have just another question that pertaining in particular to submission. So there are, just to clarify, a printed and scanned in copy of the narrative document is acceptable, correct?
Correct, yes. So if you all print it, scan it for whatever reason, yes, we'll take that scanned copy.
That was not the intention of the PDF, the fillable PDF, but if that makes the most sense for your team, then that's absolutely acceptable. And then also attachments can also be printed and scanned in as a PDF document.
But as a caveat to that, everybody, and hear me, as a caveat, if you scan it, you're not putting extra pages in there, right? So if you had this fancy graph that you did off the side, we're not saying scan it and then include it behind there, right? So the narrative document has exactly what we need back from you. So if you want to scan it and submit it, that's fine, but that scanned copy is not going to include any like additional non-narrative pages that we didn't provide, if that makes sense.
We kind of addressed that in a little bit as regards the completion check process. And so our next two questions are fairly identical, and they also pertain to the completion check process. So I just want to voice over this before you get into that a little further, John, is we have some applicants who are concerned that if they miss something in the original submission and it's corrected during the remedy period, that will affect their score. Can you clarify that for us, please?
Yeah, so as a teaser, we do not look at the content of your narratives, right? So I'm going to put that aside and apart from my response. Here's my response. 99% of our applicants have kickbacks or are incomplete and need a remedy. And so when our external reviewers get that information, we don't discern between what was provided during Q or what wasn't necessarily. So there's no place on the scoring rubric that would enable myself, I don't score it, or external reviewers to count you all down for failing to be complete initially. So if there's something that needs to be corrected during the remedy period, that is a functional thing that enables our reviewers to do their job with fidelity. So there's no negative imprint on your application at all.
Like for the most part, our external review would never even know what was originally missing at all.
Correct.
And there's to reiterate, there's no criteria around that.
Correct. Are there any other questions?
That's it for now.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to show you all what the share file screen looks like. All right. So when you all click that link, it takes you to this page. And this is where you're going to enter in, like I said, I've already entered my email in, my first and last name, my company, again, whatever I said, it was Charter School Unlimited Inc., right? So when you hit continue, you can either browse your files and do it that way, or you can just drag and drop them from wherever they're saved. Once you do that, This is what I was saying. You want to hit the upload button. Please do not walk away being like, whoo, I submitted it, and not hit that upload button. It has happened. So please, once you've drug everything over or manually inserted them in here, you'll see them here. Just hit the upload button. It will automatically send it to us, and you should get an email within 5 minutes saying that they've been uploaded. Okay, it is a lot easier than it used to be. So this interface hopefully is pretty streamlined for you all. And again, as a reminder, on submission day, we will not be available till probably like 4 o'clock to really field in these questions. So what I would do is look at it on the 10th and just make sure that it looks familiar and be ready to submit it on the 11th. Okay. All right. I don't see any questions, so we'll go ahead and go back to our slide.
I just want to reiterate that we're logging in towards the end of the day, mostly to check what has been submitted. Obviously, please adhere to our advice that you should upload or participate in the upload process as early in the day as possible. Because as John mentioned, that anecdote of him being on the phone with an applicant who has a technical issue and talking through it such that they miss the deadline has happened. And we really do not want that to be the case. So, I mean, if there is an emergency, obviously that is a call we can take. But if there's any troubleshooting that needs to be done, please do it in advance of the 11th.
All right, so we're going to talk about our completion check process. So what do we actually check during the process? So on November 11th, you're going to submit your application. On that Monday, Natalie, myself, and other TEA staff are going to start combing through your applications to make sure everything is there. These 4 big buckets are kind of what we look for, all right? So we confirm your eligibility. Did you submit everything on time? We have timestamps. So if something came in at 5:05, again, we are not going to be able to take it. We check on our end. So I'll repeat that. On our end, we have the ability to check whether or not someone from your entity attended the mandatory information session. I'm gonna pause there for a second. For those applicants who, let's just say the charter school name changed or the sponsoring entity maybe changed because you hadn't filed yet, we'll still be able to check and cross-check it. And if we can't, then we'll reach out. But again, we've got this down to pretty much of a science at this point. So if something's changed, we can probably still cross-check with who attended the meeting. If we have questions, we'll reach out to you. Articles of incorporation. We will check to make sure that those are complete and that those are dated prior to, again, the submission deadline. We will look at your tax exempt status. We'll look it up. So if you're already in existence, we'll look it up, make sure it's still current. If you have filed, but you have not gotten a final determination yet, we will look for that proof that you at least filed. And then plagiarism. We run a very robust plagiarism check. Instances of plagiarism, again, are subject for review, discussion, deliberation, and then ultimately we will, notify you all as the results of that. I don't want to scare anyone about plagiarism, but we do take it seriously. So please comb through your application to make sure you didn't just, wholesale take big chunks of a web page and cut and paste it into your application without citing it or without even trying to make it original to your proposal.
Just know that we have expanded guidance on this in the instructions and guidance document. Please refer to that. And John, just to interject quickly with a pertinent question, can you speak to how citations should be documented in the narrative?
Yeah, we don't have a house style. Actually, Natalie, do you want to speak a little bit about this? I feel like you're a little more.
Sure. I think what we say in instructions and guidance, and it's typically our stance is there's no recommended citation style. It does not have to be APA, does not have to be footnotes. I think footnotes are pretty hard to insert in the narrative document. It's just, would any reasonable person be able to tell that there is a citation? that text or ideas were cited and sourced in the narrative, whether that is, if you do want to try to insert a footnote functionality or like something that approximates a footnote, or just parenthetically with like author's name and year, that's fine. But we've seen all kinds, and it's just so long as we can tell in the text that you are referencing something else. Sometimes it's just a little line at the bottom if there's, for instance, a piece of the narrative taken from a previous year submission. So it's really just so that a reasonable person can tell that text or information or ideas are cited.
Okay, so we need you all, again, as you do your, I'm sorry, let's make sure we have a question. Someone's asking, does a receipt letter from the IRS constitute proof for tax exempt application? A receipt letter, yes. All right, so we'll review attachments. As I said before, please, before you submit them, make sure that they're in order, that they're paginated, and that you include those cover sheets, because those are pretty much all the reasons we will kick it back to you, is they're lacking page numbers, or more importantly, their cover sheets are missing, or attachments are just wholesale missing. Let's see. Okay, someone's asking, my email changed since the mandatory session. If your email changed drastically, then please email us and let us know prior to November 11th so we have record of it. So if it went from John.Garland to Charters Unlimited, yeah, we'll need to know that. If it just changed a little bit, we'll still be able to cross-check that, cross-reference. But if you're worried about it either way, email us and we will make note of it. For those who've already emailed us, we've already made note of it, but if you haven't, please, by all means. So we also confirm your notifications, as I said before. We will go through all your statements of impact. So again, this year you do not need to give us the actual green mail receipts, just the numbers provided on the mail receipt. But as I said before in I think the app info session, please be sure that you have kept those in case we do need to ask for them, but you do not need to scan those in and submit them with your application this year, just that form that we gave you all. Public meeting notice, again, we will comb through our emails to be sure that we have been CC'd on them. If you're worried about it, like I said, you can print that email that you sent whoever out and include it in your attachments document as a redundancy, that's fine as well. And then publish public meetings. So we're gonna look, right? So we're gonna look to see, okay, they're gonna be in Austin ISD, that's their geo boundary, that they had their meeting, or that they've published rather in a newspaper that is circulated within that district. So please make sure that wherever you publish that public meeting, that publication has a wide circulation within your proposed geographic boundary. It does not need to be within the district that you're going to be in, but it needs to be somewhere within the, needs to be in the geographic boundary. It's very important because a couple of applicants last year had some difficulty with that. So we just want to be sure that everyone is clear on the front end. And then confirm signatures. Like I said, we're going to make wherever you needed to initial something or sign something, we're going to double check, make sure that that's signed. It is not uncommon for us to kick back something and say, hey, this board member forgot to get this notarized, or this board member forgot to sign it, or there's an initial missing on the letter of special assurances. So before you submit, just please be aware, we do check all of that and we will kick it back saying, hey, there's a signature missing, please, resubmit. Okay. So this is what we check. If something's missing and can be remedied or cured, then you all will then advance to the cure period. If you are complete by default, like you've done everything initially complete, then nothing, you don't need to do anything else. If you get a letter from us that says you're incomplete and you need to cure, you will have 5 business days to submit all those required cure documents. I believe our timeline kind of like includes a week, like a weekend as well. So you have like 7 days, most likely, but like 5 business days. So you have a long time to make sure that these things are fixed. But again, I want to say this one more time, okay? in all of this, whatever you submit during the cure period, you're only submitting what we ask, all right? So if you get a letter and it says, hey, you're missing the biographical affidavit, that is not an opportunity to say, hey, I've included that, but I also wanted to tweak the governance section narrative. We won't take it. So whatever we ask for during the cure period is what we expect to get back, nothing more, nothing less. And I hope that makes sense to everybody. So if you all successfully cure any items that are outstanding or need to be modified, then you will then move to external review process. We talked about the external review process during the app info session. That is where your application will actually get scored. Okay. Before I move on from this, do we have any questions, Natalie?
Yeah, we just have a process question about whether or not the letter is emailed. So just to clarify, whenever we say we are sending you a letter, that means we are sending you an email. So it will be on
Yes.
TEA letterhead, it will be official, but it will be emailed. So again, that's to our previous conversation, why you want to make sure that the correct email is in our possession, so that we are sending any of these very important, in some cases, time-sensitive documents to the correct email address. So just to clarify, cure emails are sent to the email that the contact for the applicant that we have on file. And then that is who we are expecting to see cure submissions from, and then that further notification as to whether or not the application will be sent to external review that John was just speaking about. All of those come through email.
So what do we not check for? This is almost as important as what we do check for. So as I said, narrative content, we don't check. We're not going to comb through your narrative documents, right? So we're not going to look unless there's an attestation that we need to check. We're not going to look to see if you answered the question about geographic boundaries. And also, I just want to say that, pardon me, when we say that the application will be scored on the narrative responses providing the original submission, again, that literally means like what you submit is what we're going to take. Our completion check process really is kind of limited to the realm of the attachments, right? So your narrative is not going to change. So that needs to be as airtight as you possibly can make it by the time you submit, okay? We're not looking for quality of the responses. If you give us, something amazing or something that needs growth, we're not going to know until way later down the line. So it's on your end to make sure that you are presenting the best application you possibly can. I've already mentioned the unrequested documents, but I just want to expound on this just a tad. There are some scenarios in the past, and I think we've gotten a couple emails this generation that said, John, we have board members, but we may get more board members after we submit the application, right? So, or what if we have more public meetings after we submit the application? In the event that you have additional content to add to your proposal, you will not be able to do that unless you get far down the line and are advanced to capacity interview. At that point, you'll be able to provide additional documentation on additional meetings you had, or, hey, we have 2 more board members, et cetera, right? But the application that you submit is the application that gets scored. So again, going back to the board issue, if you feel really good about your board, but you want to add 2 more members, that's completely fine. Just bear in mind, you will not be able to tell us about that unless you could advance a capacity interview, and that's after it's scored. So just want to be, we're all clear on that before we move on. All right, good. All right, so some key takeaways, right? So you know that you need to submit it by November 11th, 5 p.m., okay? If you're not in Central Time Zone, please bear that in mind. Please review all of our expectations before you submit the application. We've given you plenty of information on where to look to find those expectations. Please do your own completion check before submitting. And again, and this is the most important one, is please, please, please begin your upload process at least 2 hours before the deadline. And I want to say this as a personal measure. I know I am coming off pretty stern to you all right now, but I think you need to understand, more than anybody, Natalie and I know how hard you work on these. it's like you're writing PhD level stuff in 1/3 the time. That said, we don't want to see you in a situation where you have spent all this time and then you can't have your application reviewed over something that could have been prevented like right now. So this is why I'm taking this tone, is not because I assume you all are going to mess up. No, I'm just wanting you all to benefit from, the mistakes that have been made in the past and best practices that we've learned kind of along the way, right? So with that said, we're about 10 minutes early. We have time for questions, if y'all have any. See, someone's asking if we have a question on the financial section, who should we contact? You all will contact us at the Charter app inbox. And if we can field that question, we will. If we need to outsource that question and it's still permissible, we will do that. But again, as a reminder, we can't provide any input as to the specifics of your financial plan. But if it's a technical question regarding the workbook or something like that, we can certainly try and get that answered ASAP.
Yes, y'all still have some days to ask us questions, so feel free to submit those to the charter application inbox as they are specific to your proposal, and we should be able to answer most of them in advance of the deadline, provided we don't receive them by 4:59, or we receive them by 4:59 on November 10th. Other common mistakes we would elevate, John. I don't know how common it is, but one thing that always just kind of makes me a little bit nervous is remember that you only get one shot at submission. I know that John has mentioned this throughout. That's in part why we encourage you to have your application ready to go earlier in the day, because if you hit upload, that's what we take. And so if for whatever reason the financial plan workbook, wasn't submitted by that time, then that's, that becomes a eligibility issue. So, just make sure that you're putting in every single document that you need to, that you put in the correct versions of every single one that you need to. The financial plan workbook is somewhat of a bad example because we know that we had to issue an updated and revised version. And so we have made that clear, and I'm just going to take this opportunity that is a completion check correction. If you, for whatever reason, upload the incorrect version of the financial plan workbook, we will be checking that. Our completion check team will be checking that, and you'll have the opportunity to cure that. But just if there are any other major application components that are missing in that initial upload, then just make sure we receive that by 5 p.m. Anything else you'd add to that, John?
It's good. Okay, someone said they're having trouble saving it. I've triple checked that. It's saving on my end and other people's end. So if you're having problems with that and you can't resolve it, I'm not sure why it's happening. Again, maybe it's an Adobe issue, but I think someone's saying maybe it's a subscription issue, but it's not a, there's nothing wrong with the PDF. So that should work. But again, if you all are having problems with that, please reach out ASAP.
Yeah, we have encountered some issues with if someone has an Adobe subscription, that can sometimes interfere. You really want to make sure that you're using the desktop app and not the subscription through a web browser. However, yes, printing and scanning is always an option. That there's nothing wrong with that, so long as the page numbers are, paginated and everything is good to go in terms of formatting. Okay, so we have a good question about plagiarism, as to whether or not there's a percentage threshold. So formally there is not, because sometimes the percentage ticks previous submissions. As sometimes the plagiarism checker will catch big passages of the application that have been submitted to us in previous years, things like that. And so we actually have a very analytical process when it comes to the plagiarism check. We don't just blindly consider the percentage and say yay or nay. We actually look at every single significant passage that has been cited in the check to make sure that it's either cited somewhere in the narrative, or that if we identify the source material, that the source material is identified, and so on. So the short answer is no, we do not have a hard percentage threshold, because there's a lot more analytical work involved in making sure that whether or not the content is original or not, especially, and as we say in the plagiarism section of the instructions and guidance, a lot of education speak and theory can match what other people have said in other published documents. And so that's part of why we analyze so closely, is to make sure that these aren't just general terms that are used in the field, and that they are actually like specific ideas that merit citation. I hope that answers your question.
All right, everybody, I'm going to give everybody about 30 more seconds. Put your last questions in. And we'll get those answered if you have them.
John, we have a question about the letter of special assurances.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question is, if the board chair is signing the assurances, initialing the assurances, but let's just say the proposed superintendent is the one submitting the application, that's fine, but ideally we would like the same person who's initialing to have their name on the submission line, if that makes sense, on the signature line. So if the proposed superintendent's signature is on there, we're going to assume that you have the authority to do that. That's part of the assurances, it's in there. But again, ideally, the board president is going to be the initialer as well as the signature executor. That makes sense. So they should be the one and the same, but if not, then again, we'll go from there. For those scanning it in, and I'll say this is my last bit, for those who are scanning it in, just be sure that if you print it, those supplemental pages, the resource pages, aren't included in your submission, right? So if you print it out, take those out if they are printing. Those do not count towards a page limit. I'll repeat that. So if you have all of them open, they do not count towards the page limit. They're not calculating. So, but if you print it out and scan it, you'll have to take those out, right? If for whatever reason they're printing. All right. Okay. I think y'all are ready. I think y'all have everything you need to just fine tune it this next couple of weeks and get it into us and take a deep breath and celebrate.
Yes, and remember, we're here for, the next week as you fine tune everything. So if you still have outstanding questions that you didn't think of or didn't get to today, that's absolutely fine. Just reach out to the charter application inbox, and we'll be happy to take more specific questions about your proposal as far as technical assistance, submission requirements, things of that nature.
Someone just asked a really last minute question and I'll answer it. For those who want to sign off, you can. If you print it out, remember in the application narrative, there are those buttons at the top that allow you to look at those resource pages that have the criteria on them and those information. For those who are submitting it, it's fine. It won't include in your submission. But if you're printing it, it might print those pages. And so if you print it out to scan it back in, be sure you don't scan those extra supplemental pages that don't have narrative on them. Those are those informational pages. If you have questions about it, email us and I'll be glad to talk with you on the phone or walk you through that. But otherwise, all we want, if you scan it in, are the narrative pages and the pages before the narrative, like the table of contents, etc. Okay? All right, y'all. Be well. Try and relax. You're almost there. Again, please reach out with any questions, and otherwise we will see you later. Bye, guys.
Thanks.